snow had a way of remembering. It clung to the bark of the old pines and thin shelves as if refusing to forget the last storm, whitened the fur along Ghost's spine until the dire wolf was more wraith than beast, settled into the seams of leather and wool and made a record against skin that no fire entirely erased. When the first gray light filtered through the trees, the flakes rose out of shadow like slow thoughts and turned the forest into a page written upon without haste. Jon drew his horse down to a patient walk and let the winter breathe its frost into the cloth over his mouth. His men kept quiet, hoofs hushed, harnesses muttered. Every sound had a soft edge to it. The cold even made the air seem honest. He had stood in halls of warm stone and had spoken to a queen whose eyes had held a hunger he could not deny and a mercy he could not trust. He had tried to put the North into words for her and been made to feel that words were the least of what was required. Neil, Tyrion had said with clever kindness, "The world is burning. What does it matter what name you wear while you hold the bucket?" But names mattered. Knees mattered. The wall between what a man would surrender and what he must keep for those he loved mattered until the day he died for it. Ghost lifted his broad head and nostrils smoked. The direwolf's ears pricked, and Jon's gloved hand found the warmth at the base of the skull and rested there. The men saw the gesture and let it ease the tension in their shoulders. Davos, riding not far back with his old sailor's spine stubbornly straight, cast his mild glance over the group, counting without seeming to, measuring distance like a man plotting a harbor. 2 hours at this pace, Davos said when Jon drew level with him again, his breath a tame cloud. If the road hasn't drifted deep along the hedge by the marsh, I keep waiting for the North to be done surprising me. Think I'll be an old man before that happens. You are an old man, Jon said, and it was not unkind. The corners of his eyes crinkled and a hint of warmth moved through his voice, like the remembered taste of a decent stew. Aye, and it's worked out well enough, Davos said. The smirk he favored the world with showed in the little dents beside his mouth. Easier to stay humble when your back tells you a different weather each morning. The road wound left around a stand of hawthorn. The branches were netted with white and held tiny red berries that looked indecently bright, a stubborn blood swear in a world of bone and ash. Jon raked the trees with a glance because habit coiled in him now. He could not move through any place without measuring where men might hide, where arrows could travel, where wolves could watch. He had been dead and returned to life still bound to this earth by the cords of old duties that would not rot even for the grave. That too the snow remembered. He was often aware of it in the quiet, the faint strangeness beneath his breastbone, as if the heart there had once grown cold enough to crack and then been warmed at a dragon's mouth until it beat again, no longer trusting its own rhythm. Ghost likes the smell of home, he said. It came upon him then, a swell like a tide. How deep that word ran. The tightening of his throat was not a thing he welcomed, but he did not pretend it was not there. Home likes the smell of Ghost, Davos said. A city might want its bells rung when a fleet returns. Winterfell seems a place that would rather have a good nose at the gate. They came to the rise where the trees fell back, and Winterfell lay before them with her smoke and her steam. A patient animal crouched in the snow with warmth rising from her flanks. The outer walls sat scarred by past fires yet unbowed, and the banners on the towers hung low and heavy. The wind was not eager today. A few figures moved along the battlements, dark strokes against the pale world. Somewhere a hammer struck and paused and struck again. Jon took it in with the quiet greed of a man who had feared he would never see it again, who had believed he had seen it for the last time so many times that each return felt like theft. The men behind him began to talk in the small voices men put on near home, voices that bend and blur, not to anger the walls with loud claim. Ghost leapt ahead with a single exuberant bound and then checked himself as if remembering that wolves had dignity to maintain in front of the gatehouse. He rode through those gates with a hand on the pommel and breath like knives in his chest because he could not stop the memories that rose, unbidden but orderly as soldiers. The day they had ridden out and Ned had looked down at him and told him he was a Stark even if the world named him otherwise. The time he had been a boy with a sword too long and a heart too eager. The day he had returned from the wall with that strange mantle on him that smelled of smoke and salt. He rode through the gates as a man who had bent the North and himself into knots and come apart and found a way to tie again. Open, He heard someone shout, and he knew the voice. The rhythm of it hit his ear like the pattern of a lullaby he hadn't known he remembered. Open for Jon Snow. He swung down. The cold reached for his knees through the leather, and pain flared up his thigh like a piece of quickfire, then made itself at home. His body had a new map drawn upon it these days, and the roads were broken in odd places. He touched his gloved hand briefly to the saddle, the simple real gratitude for a good horse, and turned. Sansa stood just within the courtyard, told by the fur-lined cloak that pooled around her ankles and the winter light in her hair that made the red moor like copper warmed near a flame. She did not cross the yard to him as a sister who could not wait. She waited as a ruler does, measured by the eyes upon her, and as he came to her, the breath around them thickened with silence. He wanted to say the foolish Eingie first. I'm sorry. That was the shape of it, though it carried 1,000 unnameable particulars within it. He wanted to say it for the cold nights he had left her to learn in, for the years where he had guarded the wall and she had learned to guard herself, for how he had made choices that touched her without touching her cheek. She was alive. She was whole. She had a look to her now that was neither the court nor the road, but something hammered out of both. A blade that had found, at last, the right hand. "Winterfell's glad to see you," she said, and the corner of her mouth tilted. "I suppose I am too." He smiled and then did not, because too much of him wanted to hold her, and this was not a place to be only a brother, not anymore. The faces gathered around them. Manderley's men with their broad frames under plain coats, Karstark's with their tightened mouths, Glover's nephew with that overbright watching look of a man who learned too late to watch. The steam of the hot pools drifted in and made a faint cloud behind Sansa like something from an old tale. He found her gaze and set his answer there where it could not slide. "It is good to be home," he said, and then lower. "We need to talk." "We will," she said. Her eyes narrowed the space of a heartbeat. "When your blood's thawed and you remember the taste of stew." Davos stepped up then with the courtesy he had worn like a second skin since he had chosen to serve rulers. He bent his head to Sansa, and the humor at the corners of his eyes deepened. "My lady," he said, careful, because titles weren't pebbles to be kicked about in a yard, and a man who had seen too many wars should not contribute to a new one by accident. "I bring him back, though he fought me the length of the road to get here faster. We're grateful you kept him from his horse's death," Sansa said. "I am told you advise men into prudence. I may have need of that." "I advise the men I care about to stay alive," Davos said. "Prudence is just the needle I use to sew life into plans." "Then you are well matched to the work here." Sansa's mouth softened. "Come inside. Both of you, all of you. The kitchens have been shamestruck by hunger since first messenger, and Willa has been threatening to throw the stew pot at any man who says he's not yet hungry because the cold stole his stomach." They moved, the crowd opening just enough and closing again behind. The smell of the courtyard was straw and old blood and steam and snow, the honest stink of a place that kept men standing. Jon caught glimpses as he walked. A boy with ears too red hauling a basket of vegetables. A woman pinning a mended shirt to a line with fingers that had cracked and bled and healed into tough maps. A dog limping because some fights leave both sides lessened. Ghost disappeared around a corner, a white tide against dark earth. A pair of children squealed and then turned the squeal into laughter when the direwolf ignored them as if he had better things to worry about than tiny humans and their need to be noticed. They came into the great hall. The old oak doors groaned like animals settling down for sleep as they closed. The heat folded around him with a softness that made his ribs hurt, and the flavors in the air woke balefully greedy need. Onions, a hint of venison, fresh bread with its crust crackling in indignant pride. The fire in the hearth had banked into a steady, muscle-thick flame that set a hand who knew what had been tending it since dawn. Sansa brought him not to the high seat but to a table near the middle of the hall. It had been scrubbed and rubbed and bore the scars and shine of care. A wooden trencher appeared as if the wood itself had crowded closer and turned obedient, and a heavy bowl followed. Willa herself came and slapped down a ladleful of stew so full that the surface heaved and corrected itself. She looked at him with an expression that declared lord or no. He had better eat if he valued his health and her good opinion. He ate. He had not believed he was truly hungry until the first spoonful hit his tongue, and then there was no hunger left to speak of, only an urgency like drowning. Meat and root and salt put right the places the cold had rearranged. He ate until his world narrowed and slowed into a long, quiet yes. Somewhere distant he was aware of the hall continuing around him. Somewhere closer, Sansa's profile in the firelight, the way she had woven the fur at her shoulders into a braid like a winter river, the thread of silver at her throat that caught flame and turned it into something stern. When he could set the spoon down and be a man again, he leaned back and listened to himself breathe. He half laughed. "Lo, Willa," he said when he found his voice. "I'll not say I'm not hungry again. Not with you in earshot." "I know where you sleep," Willa said, satisfied. "I'll come beat you with a ladle if I hear you say it." Then to Sansa, softer, "We'll need more barley." Sansa's nod was immediate. "Double the order. If the stores complain, send them to me. We can stretch the turnip with it and no one will complain." The words were not grand, but the manner of them had the weight of an oath. Jon saw in that small exchange all the work she had done since he had left, the quiet hours of reckoning that never made songs. He felt something like pride break loose in him and drift up, dizzy as a man who had stood too fast. "We need to talk," he said again, "because words spoiled in the mouth if you kept them too long." "In the gods would." Sansa set down her cup, the bend of her wrist graceful in the way of someone who had been taught to make her hands a message and then had decided which messages she would send. "To the gods would then." Outside again, the cold bit like laughter in the air. The path to the godswood was scrupulously cleared and then left to be what it would be underfoot, because men in the north understood that a path overtamed became a trap. The trees SWA. Load them gradually. The noise of the keep fell behind like a tired companion. The godswood of Winterfell was old enough to make the word old look childish. The weirwood's face waited, the red eyes like a patient blood that had learned to be still. The mouth curved its age-old sorrow, and the leaves trembled in a wind Jon did not feel as much as here, the scratch small and intimate. They stood a little apart because to be too close to that face could feel like leaning over the edge of a deep well. Jon found his breath, watched it smoke like a poor man's offering, and then he said the thing he had brought like a necessary wound all the way from the island of black stone and older fires. "I told her no," he said. "I told Daenerys Targaryen I would not bend the knee. I told her I would not take her war for my name and turn it into ours. Not while there is a night coming that no crown can stop. She offered me more than a life, less than the truth. She's not a monster. She's not a fool. But she is herself. And we are ourselves. We do not sell the North, not even to buy the world." Sansa watched him with that measured look that had nothing of girl left in it. "You chose," she said. The words came like stones clicking into place to build something. "And you came home. So now you tell me because you know what it means." "It means we cannot pretend," Jon said. He turned with the habit of a soldier, hands small, restless on nothing, then stilled. "I left you to rule and I went to find fire that would not scald us. I found fire that burns because that is its nature. We cannot put the North's life on a honeymoon with dragons. If we are to stand, we must stand as ourselves." The weirwood watched them. It did not blink. Sansa looked down. Snow had begun to thread the air with a shy persistence, flakes thin as the skin on broth. She lifted her hand and watched a few melt against the glove. Each small dissolution a decision made and unmade. When she spoke, her voice did not rise. She spoke in the tone she used to give orders about flour and spears. "What do you want of me, Jon?" He had thought of many shapes for the answer on the road. Each had gone sour in his mouth when he tried on the language of king, of duty, of sacrifice. He let the silence stretch a heartbeat longer so that what he said would not be ill-made in haste. "I want you to be what you already are," he said. "Queen in the North, not made by my will, but acknowledged by it." He exhaled and a knot shifted along his back as if a strap had been loosened. "They listen to me, they follow me, they would follow me into a ruin if I told them it was a castle. That is as dangerous as an enemy. I know how to lead a charge. I do not know how to run a winter. You do. You've done it. You've done it with trade and with grain and with the pride of men who think they should be asked twice when their queen is a woman and a Stark and young. You made them do what needed doing and they didn't hate you for it. Or if they did it while they obeyed and then slept well because their bellies were not empty. I can fight the thing coming from the north. You can hold the north so that there's still a place for men to come back to when they've lost half of themselves saving it." His words settled between them and went quiet. Sansa drew a breath that lifted her shoulders and then allowed it to go out again. "You put more weight on my shoulders than I would choose," she said. "I know," he said, "and you ask. You do not tell. That, I'll admit, makes it easier." She took 2 steps closer to the tree, looked up into those carven eyes like a woman asking an old relative for advice and expecting none. "If I say yes, you know what follows. Raven to every hall we can trust, and to those we do not trust but need. Vows on the old gods and on bread and salt. The lords will clamor and posture. Some of them will bring us gifts and ask for more. Some will threaten to go their way. I'll need Royce and the Vale, or men like Glover will look me in the eyes and think their grandfathers had more right to the chair than I do. If I say yes, we make a promise to ourselves that no dragon across the Trident can unmake with the flick of a tail. If I become queen in the north, then Daenerys Targaryen will be a queen with a bruise on her pride. And queens with bruises can be dangerous." "I know," he said again. "I think she has a good heart. I think her good heart sits on a chair made of the skulls of anyone who stood between her and what she believed she had to do. I won't give her our people's skulls. Not while I stand." Sansa's mouth curved and then held. "You will stand," she said. "You always mean to. That is not the same as being able. You could die in the snow tomorrow and leave me to hold a title I do not want, and a war that does not care about our words or our names." "I could," he said. He lifted his chin toward the weirwood. "And if I do, then you will hold it. Better to have named the thing than have it fall on you unnamed. Better to wear a crown we choose than have a noose chosen for us." She looked at him a long time. The cold bit his cheeks until they burned and then had nothing more to say. The first flakes became a polite flurry, and the surface of the black pool beneath the tree rippled as if it had drawn breath and would let it out when it was good and ready. "All my life," Sansa said, and her voice had gone almost mild. So he knew he was meant to listen. "Men have put names on me. Child, lady, hostage, wife, widow, pawn, sister. I learned to wear them. Then I learned to stitch my own names, even if I had to hide the thread under other colors. I found my way back here and earned the one I wanted. Sansa Stark, that's enough. It could be enough." "It can be," he said. He did not move. "It might not be." Her eyes lifted to the carving in the wood, the mouth so grave. "If I say yes," she said, "if I take what you offer and what it means, then you why? I'll not stand in the hall and forget what you said in the snow. You will not try to wear 2 cloaks and pretend they do not wet each other through. If I am queen, then I need you as my sworn something, brother, sword, whatever we call it, not as the shadow of another king." He had expected the thrust and was grateful to be made to answer it. "I will swear to you," he said. "For as long as there is breath in me, I will swear, and I will keep it." Sansa nodded once. She turned her face into the small fall of snow. It dusted her eyelashes, made the hair at her temple turn pale. She blinked it away like someone accepting a kiss from a troublesome cousin. Then she looked at him. "All right," she said. "All right, Queen in the North. We will do it soon, and we will do it properly. No rush, no clamor. We will forge a crown, and we will name the old gods, and I will speak to them as if they do not pretend at ignorance. And then I will set to the 1,000 small labors that will make the word queen worth saying." He had not known until that instant that he had been braced for refusal. The release came out of him as a breath he had kept too long. He nodded once, deeply. "We will need Royce," he said, "and Manderley and Lady Mormont. Lyanna has a voice bigger than her years." The men listened to her as if she were already halfway to becoming a song. "I know," Sansa said. A smile slipped and settled. "She terrifies grown men into manners with a look. We will want Lord Serwyn too. He isn't clever, and that is a virtue. There's a kind of strength in him that serves well when cleverness begins to tangle itself. We will need the smith, Jon said. The idea had come to him on the road with the force of a thing that fits a lock. Not a jeweled crown. Iron. Something hammered out of Winterfell herself. Sansa's eyes flicked to him, a flicker like a candle in a draft. Yes, she said. Bring Oben. He was Micken's apprentice before. He knows the old ways. He'll make something that is not pretty until you look at it long enough, and then it becomes exactly itself. We'll melt the fittings we took from the shattered inner gate after Ramsay broke it. It would be right to set what broke us into what binds us. You always did see such things, Jon said, and he did not try to keep the warmth out of it now. I learned to look while speaking. They stood a while longer by the tree. Words had finished their work. Silence could do the rest. Then Sansa drew up her hood and turned. Come, she said. I'll write to Lord Royce asking him to ride before the snow thinks better of letting men cross the moat. Wyman will come if the word is feast. If we're wise, we give him 2 reasons. The days that followed were not days that bards would sing about, but they were days that made the song later plausible. They began with the smell of baking before the sun, which was no great light, set its grudging presence across the snow-stiff stones. Jon woke each morning to the softness of a fire laid new by someone who did not wake him to do it. He counted that mercy each time. He trained with men who had learned to follow him, and with boys whose shoulders had not yet made up their minds. He listened to the reports Davos gathered from the road, carts stuck in drifts between Barrowton and Winterfell, a she-wolf taking lambs near White Harbor, a band of men with no banners moving along an old Roman road who might be thieves or might be men looking for work that did not break their souls. Davos proved to be the sort of man who could sit at a table covered in charcoal marks that meant the movement of stores and come away with a plan that meant everyone would eat even if no one ate exactly what they wanted. He moved through the keep with a mildness that deceived men who did not know that mildness is only the appearance of patience when patience is the way a man delivers hard truths without turning them into punishments. Jon watched him speak to the cooks, to the armorer, to the boy who had fallen asleep on his feet and earned a cuff from his master. He watched Davos say soft things that made the men straighten, and he kept the idea inside him that he had been right to ask for this man's company and counsel. Arya moved through the days like a cat in a house, comfortable and always near sudden motion. She appeared where she was wanted and nowhere else. By Sansa's side when a lord had come to argue the terms of a pledge as if the world were a haggler's stall. In the yard watching a bout between 2 men too proud to take instruction. In the tower where Bran sat quietly surrounded by ravens that came because the air itself invited them. Bran had grown into a stillness that sometimes made Jon's skin prickle. Not because it stank of wrongness, because it smelled of something so old the senses do not know where to put it. He sat with blankets over his legs and his gaze on a middle distance no one else could see. When Jon came, he turned his head and found him, and for a little while they were only brothers. "You're choosing," Bran said quietly one afternoon. There was no question in it. The window let in a thin light and half filled the room with an unwilling glow. "You were always better at that than you gave yourself credit for. You make a choice and then you look at it and decide if it is the one you meant to make. That's more than most men do." Jon took the chair near the hearth because the room seemed to want a voice near fire. "I keep thinking there will be a day," he said, "when all the choosing's done and I can simply hold to what I decided. That day keeps not arriving." "It arrives," Bran said, and smiled in a way that made it impossible to tell if he was making a joke. "When you die. Until then you keep choosing. The gods built the world that way so they don't have to worry about us getting bored." Or that's what old Nan would say. Jon's laugh was brief. "Do you?" He groped because the part of him that had stood alone atop the wall knew how to go without the comfort of knowledge, but another part, the boy who had begged for answers from a father who always offered less than asked, was yet alive. "Do you see whether we're right?" "Right?" Bran repeated, as if turning the word over between finger and thumb. "I see paths. I see wolves moving through snow they make with their own steps. I see a crown made of things that used to be other things. Right is a word that makes men either stay seated or leap before they think. You want me to be your word? I can't. I can be your brother. That will do, Jon said, and it surprised him to discover that it would. Oben the smith came as if he had been listening at the back of the hall for his name to be spoken in the old, unhurried way. He was a thick man with hands like tongs and a face that had made up its mind where every line would go and went there. He looked at the iron bars taken from the ruined gate, at the bits of old fittings and the coils of wire and the small stack of silver that Sansa had offered to the work, and he grunted as if told a joke he would not laugh at until the punchline. "I'll do it," he said. "No crown's too big to wear. No fancies. I'll make a thing that sits on a head and reminds the head to keep still." That night Jon dreamed of heat. He stood in the smithy while Oben's apprentice worked the bellows, and the fire turned iron into something that looked like meat and hissed like anger when water bit it. Sparks rose and died, fell on his sleeve and left a smell of chastened wool. Oben struck and struck again, and the sound was the sound of the days passing. Finite, fierce, each blow a tally mark cut into the world that no one could rub out. He woke with the sound still in his ear and the taste of metal faint on his tongue. Sansa wrote. She had a way of holding the quill that looked like gentleness until you saw the straightness of her line. She wrote to Jon Royce at the Eyrie. She wrote to Wyman Manderley at White Harbor and tucked a sheet under the main letter asking after his granddaughter's health with a tone that said she would be delighted if the girl's health allowed her to visit Winterfell soon. She wrote to Lyanna Mormont and did not pad a single word because girls who held bears do not like being treated as if they clutch kittens. She wrote to Lord Glover, who had refused to send men when Jon had asked him, and to Lord Serwyn, whose hall had burned and been rebuilt with less grace and more gratitude. She wrote to small houses whose names seldom made maps. She wrote to men who had stood at the back of halls and then gone home with winter riding behind them like a poorly leashed hound. Her quill scratched a patient rhythm. The ravens took wing and became small black points against great white. She walked the walls with a cloak so heavy it made her look statuesque and told the men their post would change after the second hour because toes were not a luxury this winter. She stood in the kitchens and tasted the stew and asked how much barley Willa thought would stretch without insult. She stepped into the snow outside the armory and watched a handful of older boys hunt for their stances in a practice that looked like a dance taught by a man who knew the cost of mistakes too well to let them keep step wrong. At night she went to the Godswood. She stood with her crownless head bare and felt the small cold on her scalp. She spoke quietly to the tree because there is a kind of modesty that keeps the gods interested. She did not ask for favor. She asked for patience, for the right memory at the right time. A week passed, and then another measured by the armory's steam and the kitchen's forgiving smoke. On a morning when the sky had the brittle look of glass that will break if touched, the cry from the yard came thin and high. Riders. The sound rolled through the keep the way the smell of a fresh loaf does, lifting heads, making hands reach almost involuntarily to adjust shirts, to straighten. Jon Royce rode at the front of a neat handful, men in the Vale's mail with its taste of mountain in the form of each ring. Royce himself had a beard that looked like it had seen more of the world than the man wearing it and eyes that weighed. He dismounted in the yard with a stiffness that said he did not consider his age an enemy so much as a companion who sometimes insisted on walking ahead. "Sansa Stark," he said when she came to meet him, the name without title and more respectful for its lack. "I've had letters from you that would make a stone lean forward to listen. I've written because a woman I respect asked me to. Tell me you're not about to set me to listening to boys call themselves men while they find new names for old vanities." "Not while I can do anything about it," Sansa said. He looked at her for a long breath and then nodded, and she knew he would stand where she stood unless the ground itself broke. Wyman Manderley arrived fat and merry 2 days later, in a sledge that squealed and shuddered and carried more food than most men had seen in months. He climbed down with the grace of a man who remembered being young even if his body had begun to forget, and he embraced Sansa with a warmth that seemed to massage the cold out of the air. "My queen," he said, and then pretended to startle at his own word. "I beg your pardon, my lady. I forget that the north should not run faster than its feet will bear. I come humble and loaded." Lyanna Mormont came under a sky that had begun to think about darker business. She wore furs like a bear and sat her pony as if it owed her an apology for making her higher than those she passed. She went straight to Sansa and bowed no more than the respect owed to the gods would. "I hear there's a crown being made," she said. "If it's to sit on a head, it had better be yours. If it's to sit on a shelf, send it to the Citadel." "They like their crows silent." Sansa bent her head just enough that Lyanna would fey. She'd won and the men nearby would feel they'd seen a courtesy. "We'll make sure the crows know the difference," Sansa said. "Please come where it's warm. I'm told your men have a taste for onion tarts. I have a cook who thinks making them keeps death away." "Then keep her busy," Lyanna said. The hall filled. Men clattered, and the clatter turned slowly into a hush. Oberyn carried something wrapped in oiled cloth that did not pretend to be a crown until it was uncovered. Sansa stood at the far end of the table, not on the dais because she had learned that height made men think of how to pull you down. Jon stood at her right shoulder because that is where his oath would place him. Davos was near the doors where he could watch comings and goings and decide whether a man's face meant danger or just hunger disguised. Oberyn unwrapped the iron and it was not pretty. It was shaped like the idea of a circle someone had made in the dark by touch, then hammered into obedience until it learned to keep its shape. The surface had marks left on purpose, a geography of the strikes that made it the thing it was. Small plates like wolf's teeth jutted from it along the brow. Along the back, a pattern had been scored with the tip of a chisel, a ripple like the grain of old oak. Thin bands of silver ran through the iron like streams through rock, not decorative, but necessary in their quiet declaration that the thing belonged to light as much as to strength. "I made this," Oberyn said to no one in particular and everyone. "I made it out of the iron that once made a gate, the iron that kept men from being butchered when the man they called Lord thought butchery was his right. I put silver in it because a crown with no light in it is just a shackle. You can send it back if you want it pretty. I won't do it." "It is right," Sansa said. The words came out before she could think of the politenesses that would soften them because she did not want to soften them. "It is right because it is not ashamed of what it is." Her gown was wool-dyed a blue so deep it made the shadows near it look less sure of themselves. The fur at her shoulders stood up as if to make her look broader. Her hair had been arranged by someone with a memory for the hands of her mother. Her mouth was calm. Jon looked at her and felt the old ache. Love bent around duty until the shape of it was something human. Responsibility hollowing out pride. The ache behind the eyes when a man said words that would put the world in a new place. Royce stepped forward first, because the veil knew courtesy and because he was not afraid to let others see him begin. He set a knee to the floor and bowing seemed like less than he owed. Wyman came waddling down with a grace that surprised those too foolish to expect it and knelt with a grunt that might have been a prayer. Lyanna stood where she was and lifted her chin, and the men around her knelt because her face told them this counted as their kneeling. "Speak," Royce said, "before we all die of theater." Sansa picked up the crown. It was heavier than it looked and warm from Oberyn's hands. She could feel the history in it like a pulse, the way iron remembers the last thing it was told to do. She looked out over the sea of faces and did not try to count. She looked at Jon and let him see, just for the length of a breath, the girl who had once stood at a window and prayed for a story and had gotten one she did not choose. Then she looked back at the men. "I am Sansa of House Stark," she said. Her voice was not loud. "I was born in this hall to a father who taught me that a promise is a kind of bread and you should not make it if you can't feed it. I have been a lady and I have been a prisoner and I have worn silks and I have worn dresses sewn with rough thread because the good thread had gone to mend a banner and a boy's sleeve. I have crossed the snow with shoes too thin for it. I have sat at tables where men told me what I was worth and then discovered that their math had left me alive when it should not have. I am the daughter of Catelyn and Eddard. I am the sister of men who died for names that still matter. I am the sister of the man who stands beside me and breathes because the gods were not done with him even when men were. I will be your queen if you are my men. Not because I am owed it, because I am willing to bleed for it. Because I will not leave you to make your children eat less than they need while someone else's banner snaps prettily above you. Because the thing that comes eats kings and queens as readily as sheep, and the North needs something meatier than flattery. I will take this crown and I will hold it until someone better earns it or I die. If you want me, say it. She lifted the crown. She did not put it on her head. The hall drew a breath and held it. Men looked at each other with the panicked relief of those who have been given the chance to shout what they mean to say. It started not with a roar but with a murmur, and the murmur was better. A low note that grew because agreeing felt like wind, and the human body had been made to lean into wind and find itself steadier there. "Queen of the North," Royce said. "Queen in the North." Wyman smiled a small, sharp smile. "Queen in the North," he said, and made it sound like something fat men say before they do something surprising. "Queen in the North," Lioness said, as if telling someone where to put a spear. The rest came as if it had always been waiting on the tongue. It filled the hall and made the beams shake faintly with the rhythm of it. Sansa felt the weight move from her shoulders and then return. She felt the crown bite a little into her palms, and she liked that it did. The old gods watched with the quiet one expects from trees. She set the iron to her head. It settled as if it had known her skull's measure before it was made. She closed her eyes to let the moment finish and opened them when she knew it had. Then she turned to Jon, because the crown had not been meant to make her lonely. He went to one knee and bent his head because obedience can be a kind of joy when it is chosen. "Sansa Stark," he said, "my queen, I swear by the old gods and any new that will listen to me that I will stand for you, and in front of you and behind you. I will put my body where danger comes if it means you have another hour to think and another day to plan. I will go where you ask me to go if it is a place a man can go. I will do what you ask me to do if it is something a man can do. If I fail you, let the snow cover me and the wolves forget my name. If I betray you, let the iron bite me deeper than it bites you." Sansa looked at him with her mouth slightly open because a prayer had been answered too precisely. She put her hand on his hair. It had become a dark, more threaded with gray than he pretended. She spoke quietly, for him. "Get up," she said. "You are my sword, and I have need of a sword that knows the cold." The ceremony spilled into feasting the way water runs downhill. Wyman's casks thumped and hissed, and men drank because every vow needs salt and spice after, to keep it from curdling in the gut. Davos found himself between Lord Serwyn, who told a long and winding story about a cow that had saved his life during a storm because he had tied his tent to her, and a woman from Barrowton whose eyes could take a man's measure in the time it takes to ladle stew. He smiled and listened and tossed into the talk the small bits of wisdom adrift in him, and he did not miss the way men turned to look at the high table and measured themselves against what they saw there. Arya did not sit much. She moved along the edges and let the heat press against her cheeks until she had to find a door and step into the clean bite of night. She went to the practice yard and took up a wooden sword because the body needs its rituals when the mind is too full. She struck at the post until the post knew her name. When she grew bored with hitting something that did not dodge, she turned and found that Gendry was watching her. Surprised her enough that she let it show. "You move like you know someone's always trying to catch you," Gendry said. He had the look of a man who had been working all day at a forge that barely forgave him. "And like you mean for them to try." "I move like someone who's lived in a world where being slow was one of the more terminal mistakes," Arya said. She would not say she was happy to see him. She was happy he was there. The difference mattered. Gendry dipped his head towards the hall. "Looks proper in there. Men shouting, meat sweating. You got what you wanted." "I got what we need," Arya said. "What I want changes too often to make a crown safe." "What do you want tonight?" "To stand in the snow and not be called back in by a woman with a tart in each hand threatening to make me eat them before they cool," Arya said. "What do you want?" He thought about it, and his thinking was not stupid. "To make something that doesn't break," he said. "Even if it's a little thing. Even if it's just a hinge nobody sees when they walk through a door and don't notice the door doesn't groan." "You sound like a man who lived through this," Arya said. "If there's a way." He grinned. It made him look suddenly like a rumor of a boy he had once been, who had laughed at the dirt under his nails because at least it was his dirt. "There's always a way until there isn't." The ravens went out and the answers came in thick. One morning during a snowfall that had grown stern and relentless. Some letters were simple and their simplicity had dignity to it. Some were knitted with politeness that pinched the words into uncomfortable shapes. One, from a lord who had been too loud at feasts and too quiet in sending men when it mattered, came with language so cautious it made even Sansa raise an eyebrow and allow herself the smallest private smile because the game, if it must be played, should be at least briefly fun. And across the narrow sea of thoughts that had become politics, a raven found its way to a high, dark place where the wind spoke another language and the ocean hammered itself foolish against black stone the way a man pounds his head lightly when he cannot remember a name. Daenerys Targaryen read words written in a hand that had once been a boy's and then learned discipline, and the corner of her mouth moved, not in grief or anger, but with the muscle that restrains both. "So," she said, "the room was a room built to make the small feel smaller and the great feel lonely." Tyrion stood near the hearth because men near fire look friendlier. Missandei stood with her hands folded in a quiet that had once been the only clothing she had been allowed. Behind them, Grey Worm was as he always was, a promise in human form that the line would not break where he stood, even if he stood alone. "Your Grace," Tyrion said, caution like fine ink in his voice. "He chose," she said. She set the letter down and the parchment whispered traitorously. "He chose to make his sister a queen instead of kneeling to a queen who wanted to make his people safe. He chose the North, which refuses to be one thing and insists on surviving anyway. He chose a crown I did not offer him." "You didn't offer him one at all," Tyrion said. "You offered the world dressed in a different cloth. He is a man who believes clothes should fit the body, not the other way round." She raised a hand and then let it fall, amused briefly at her own annoyance. "You say that as if it's a virtue. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it's a habit that keeps men poor when they could be princes if they'd stop complaining about how the shoes feel." Tyrion's mouth tilted. "I've been poor," he said mildly. "I discovered I preferred not dying while wearing ill-fitting shoes to dying in style." She went to the window where the spray sometimes leapt high enough to kiss the rock below. The siwa. As a muscle, it worked and did not ask why. She had spent most of her life being told why. She had decided to live as if why belonged to her. She looked out at a world that did not know her and would learn. "He is not my enemy," she said, and her voice made the space decide to listen. "He is not even my rival. He is a man who believes as I do that monsters look like things that eat your children. He is a man who has died and still wants to choose what names he answers to. I will not burn a people to teach their man a lesson. I will not be my brother's echo. But I will not have a north that calls itself forever beyond the map while I make the world to hold what deserves it. We will go north. We will help them fight. We will show them what my dragon's fire is made for. And then we will see what a queen is in a world that has fewer monsters and more memory." Tyrion watched her with the interest a man has in the stone he stands beneath while looking for cracks. "You understand," he said, "what you will be walking into. A north that has just given itself a queen and feels marvelous for it. A people who think pride can be eaten. A sister who will hold that crown and sleep with it on because the dreams she has without it are likely worse." "I do," she said. A smile pushed up briefly and then did not apologize for having done so. "I have known worse courts. I have been to places where men thought the word queen meant a chair for their lust. The North seems a place where queen means a pair of boots and a ledger and a spine. I think I could even like it." Missandei's eyes, rich with everything she had seen women survive, softened. "And Jon Snow," she said. "He will not be pleased to see you. He will be pleased for his people to have more fire for the night," Daenerys said. "He can swallow the rest the way decent men swallow suet pudding. For duty." Grey Worm's gaze did not waver. "We will go where you go," he said. "We will hold where you tell us to. We will not be distracted by men calling their pride a wall." She waved a hand, half amused. "Don't worry, Grey Worm," she said. "I suspect the North will be too busy surviving its own whether to trouble you with their pride. We will make our allies by giving them what they need. And if they still do not want me, she shrugged, a small, almost girlish gesture that would have made Viserys furious. Then the table will be set and I will eat elsewhere. The sea went on being a muscle. Above, the dragons sketched shadows on the sky, lazy in the cold, their fire banked deep within them where no wind could reach it. At Winterfell, Sansa tried on the crown when no one watched her. She stood in the narrow room with the narrow window through which a thin little piece of sky had been squeezed, and she said her own name plainly. The crown sat. It was not a lover nor a friend. It was a tool and an animal. It would bite if she let it. It would keep weight from crushing her neck if she learned to carry herself as it asked her to. Arya came in without knocking because the habits of women who live depend on knowing that doors are sometimes luxury. She leaned in the doorway and tilted her head, cat-like. "You look dangerous," Arya said. "I look like a woman about to attend a meeting with Lord Glover and Lord Serwyn and listen to them argue about the relative moral qualities of larch and oak," Sansa said dryly. "I would rather be dangerous. I could stick one of them with the pointy end and we could all go home," Arya suggested in a tone that made men who did not know her laugh uneasily. Sansa did not laugh. There are certain jokes sisters have learned not to laugh at, and that learning is made of love. "No," Sansa said, "but you can stand in the corner and watch their faces for me. I can listen to the words. You can listen to the lies they have told themselves so long they've forgotten how to be ashamed." Arya nodded, terribly pleased. "I can do that," she said. "And if one of them's thinking about you like a deer, I'll imagine him roasted." Sansa smiled, then went still. "Arya," she said. The word in her mouth went soft and then set like glass cooling. "Thank you." "For what?" Arya taunted. It was an old bit they had played as children, thrown back and forth on summer afternoons when the air was easy. "For coming back to me," Sansa said simply. Arya looked at her and something in her softened the way frozen meat does in a good stew. "We came back to each other," she said. "That's the trick men forget when they choose their wars. You come back to each other or you become a song men sing about being brave while they forget your face." Wyman brought her lists. Royce brought advice that sounded like orders until the moment it mattered, at which point the orders turned into advice again and everyone pretended the change had always been there. Lyanna brought a cool disdain for men who thought the business of the world was done when they had gone to bed full. Sansa set them one by one to their uses the way a cook sets out knives and chooses which will do for turnips and which for meat. Davos found Jon in the yard by the archery butts as dusk leaned in with that particular insistence dusk has when snow threatens. Jon was loosing arrows at a rate that suggested he believed the target had insulted someone he loved. Ghost lay nearby in a patch he had excavated from the snow and put his massive head on his paws and watched with the patient boredom of a beast that knows men must do certain silly things to keep feeling alive. "You're wearing a look that says, 'If I keep doing this, I won't have to think,'" Davos said. "You always were good at reading men," Jon said, not looking away from the marker. He drew and loosed and the arrow thunked, unspectacular and sound. "Only good at reading men who want to be read," Davos said. He came to stand where the target spoke the arrows back to them with each mute strike. "She's doing well. She wears it why? Without letting it eat her. I've seen men be worn hollow by less. She was made for this work by those who thought they were unmaking her," Jon said. "That thought keeps me warm and furious." Davos shrugged, a small lift. "Might be the story of the world," he said. "Men unmaking what they think they control, gods remaking it with their own hands, and in between the rest of us trying to eat and keep our children from freezing to death." Jon lowered the bow. The air had gotten into his joints. It would take time to get it out. "She will need to speak to Daenerys," he said. "Soon. We must, before the dragons are a silhouette against the gray north and the men on the walls think that means fire instead of help." "I'll write," Davos said. "And I'll write it plain. I've learned men who command ships appreciate plain letters. Queens might be the same." Brienne came, moving with her homespun grace, the great sword at her back, the kind of quiet a woman earns by being useful long enough to stop caring who thinks she's beautiful. She bent her big body to Sansa's ear. "Your Grace," she said, and the words sounded practiced in her mouth. There's a man at the gate with a face like a hatchet who says he has news from Eastwatch. He looks as if he was born in a gale. Bring him, Sansa said, carefully. He came headfirst into the hall like an accusation, half frozen, with his beard of frostwork and his hands red and raw. The men near the door drew back not out of disgust, but out of an old instinct to give certain news the room it needs to travel. He looked at Sansa and took off his glove, and you could see him force his fingers into behaving like fingers long enough to do it. "Lord Commander," he said to Jon out of habit. Then he pulled himself straight and corrected. "Your Grace," he said to Sansa through a mouth that had learned that words are sometimes too slow. "The dead." He did not need to say more. It was as if the air itself had remembered something and fallen quiet to hear it. Men who had allowed the night to be a romantic thing in their heads felt it change shape. The dead. The word is small. It opens and a world falls out. "Where?" Sansa said, and you could see the crown put itself along her bones as she stood. "Hard to say," the man said. "Hard to say where the dead are when they're where no man should be. Eastwatch still stands, but there are holes where there weren't, and they keep trying those holes like water looking for the place it can get in. We need men. We need fire. We need someone to make the counting make sense." Jon was at the man's side before he knew he had moved. His hands went to the man's arms, the easy soldier's way of lending warmth without making a fuss of it. "You rode fast," he said. "You rode well. You'll eat. You'll sleep. Then you'll tell me everything you know and everything you're guessing, and we'll put them in different boxes." The man laughed. Came out broken. "I always thought I'd die with a jest in my mouth," he said. "I suppose that'll do." Sansa looked at the faces in the hall, and every face looked back. She lifted her chin and the crown moved with her as if it had learned her ways already. "We will send what we can," she said, and her voice went out through the room and settled into corners and men's ears. "We will send men, and we will send fire, and we will send someone who knows how to make men into what they need to be for a night that doesn't care about their names. We will court an alliance with fire and scales, because dying proud is for songs and we have living to do. And we will keep Winterfell fed, and we will keep watch. We will not let our fear make us fools." Jon looked at her and felt that odd peaceful terror one has when standing at the edge of something necessary. He looked at Davos and saw a man already calculating the distance between carts and wheels. He looked at Arya and saw a blade putting itself to use. He looked at Brienne and saw the wall that did not break. He looked at the man from Eastwatch and saw a man who would sleep under a roof tonight and perhaps be brave again tomorrow. Later, when the hall had thinned and the fires were being banked to sleep without sulking, Sansa sat near the hearth and warmed one booted foot and then the other. Jon came to her and did not sit until she made that little gesture with her hand that meant he should. "You've done the thing," he said softly, "because sometimes praise should be given without too much ribbon on it." "I've done the beginning of the thing," she said. "Beginnings taste better than middles." "You'll do the middle," he said. "And you'll do the part where you go where men die so others won't, and you'll make it look as if that was a normal way to spend a winter," she said. "We're both very stubborn. It's kept us this long." She looked into the embers. "She will come," she said. "Daenerys, with her dragons and her beautiful friends and her belief that the world is a chessboard and she is the hand that moves the queen. She will come and she will see me wearing a crown that says I think for myself. And then we will learn if two women can have a conversation about life and death without men breaking the table between them." "We'll build a sturdy table," Jon said, and she smiled. "Do," she said. "Oberyn makes good tables. He made a crown that sits right on my head. Perhaps he can make a table that sits right between two queens." Jon let his head drop until his chin touched his chest and then lifted it. "I will go to Eastwatch first light," he said. "I'll take men we can spare. I'll take letters for any man along the way who thinks he has a better problem to worry about. I'll take Ghost." The direwolf raised his head at hearing his name as if he had been only pretending to sleep. "I'll see what we need and how much we can accomplish without breaking what we're trying to save. I'll keep the food from running out while you play with monsters," Sansa said. "It's good to divide the work in a marriage." He choked on the laugh that hit him. We are not. I know, she said. It's a jest because I wanted to remind you that we remember how. Go, sleep. I'll send Willa to bully you into eating before you ride, and she'll threaten your very existence with a plate in her hand. Men ride better when they've been bullied. I'll accept your wisdom, he said mock solemnly. He rose. He lingered because he did not want to break the small warmth this near the fire, and because one thing the dead do is steal the remembering of warmth. Then he bowed because some gestures, repeated often enough with honest intention, stop being theater and become something like ritual. She lifted her fingers and the crown gleamed briefly as the light found a seam and ran along it like a fox in snow. Snow thickened outside and the keep took it the way an old woman takes small aches, with a sound of quiet disapproval and the continuation of duties. Men went to their pallets. Women put away the last of the bowls and stretched their backs and sat with their feet by the fire to let the blood tell them stories of where it had been all day. Somewhere in the tower, Bran turned his face toward a window and closed his eyes, and the birds came as if called by nothing. Far to the south, Daenerys stood at the edge of a cliff and let the wind talk at her. Far to the north, the dead made no sound because they have no need to talk to the living unless it is with their hands. The ravens would fly again come morning. The roads would be measured and argued. The crowns we choose and those placed on us would both bite. But for a while, between the falling of one snow and the next, the north held its breath and felt the iron settle and the food settle and the fear settle into the place it belongs, which is not in the chest but in the hands. Hands know what to do with fear. They make things. They lift. They hold. They point. They learn to pass one stone to another, to build a wall, to light a fire, to offer a cup. In the century-old kitchen, Willa muttered as she wrapped loaves in cloth and set them aside as if they were infants. In the armory, Oberyn ran his hand along the crown he had made for no reason at all other than the one men will always have for touching the thing they created that continues to be what they meant. In the yard, Ghost lifted his head and sniffed a wind that came from nowhere and meant nothing that he could explain to men. He put his head back on his paws. He slept. He dreamed of a forest where the snow remembered everything and forgot nothing, and the dream was good because in it he ran, and running makes sense to wolves even when kings and queens, and men and women who are not yet done being themselves must walk.